So this is my POL presentation. So before I start, a little fun fact about me: I like to bake a lot. Like I like to make bread from scratch and stuff like that. So that's my analogy. So this is my first year at MPX, and before coming to MPX, I always thought that I'd be really good at group work and working with other people and being sociable because I'm an extrovert. But then I came to MPX and realized that most people here are like that, and they also are not afraid to share ideas. So it's it makes it more difficult to work with other people. And you also have a lot of group projects which force you to do something called talk and compromise. Throughout the semester, I had to learn how to talk to people I wouldn't otherwise, and how to work with people who had vastly different learning approaches to me. So the infographics is a good example of this. Our plants need water assignment is that one over there. So before this assignment, I talked to Kai maybe like 3 times in my entire life. So after this, I had to learn how to work with her and know how she works and stuff like that. But when we worked together, she made sure we kept on track and went with all of the information that we had. We were the first to finish the assignment, and we got an A in both the oral quiz and the infographic itself. We kept going back and forth to Mr. Koneko because we thought we finished early, but he kept telling us to put stuff be correct and we had to implement it. So we were both absent for a big part of the project. I was absent for one of the days and Kai was absent for 2 of the days. So through that, we had to make sure we knew what our assigned roles are and learn how to pick up the slack. Kai and I exchanged texts and learn how to put the information on and finish earlier than anyone else. And this is build social emotional awareness and empathy and increasingly connected world. In making bread, I've done terrible bread by not communicating many times. An example of this is on Thanksgiving dinner. I was tasked with making dinner rolls, and I asked my dad to get butter, because butter is actually a big part of dinner rolls. It's very important. But when I put them, they were really, really salty, and they felt like they weighed like 1/3 pound each, because the butter is a leveler, so it makes them very, very dense, and then it was almost impossible to eat because of how salty it was. Another example is adding ingredients and watch how they interact with each other. So yeast should start activating right away, but if it doesn't, that means it's been exposed to moisture, and then you have to learn how to read that, and you have to learn how to communicate effectively, especially through reading and stuff like that. So make sure that if your recipe requires milk, that the milk you use before you add heavy cream to it is actually 2%, so you don't make 102% milk. 100. And so my next slide is how to apply creativity and imagination in problem solving. And for this, I used the hydroponics assignment. There were multiple times this year where I managed to turn in a project by winging it, and somehow it works. A good example of this would be my hydroponics assignment. You see, the hydroponics tower, I had decided was not my idea. It was originally Justin's, so I expected it to fail.
Always.
I did.
It's always me.
Look at his original blueprint of it. It didn't look like it would work at all because it was it didn't look that good. But eventually we were able to extrapolate how to work with that. And we took a lot of, had to find a way to get the water to spread out on top so it wouldn't just bubble over the inner tube and then fall down again. So by that, I remembered how sprinklers, they have all those little holes on, and the high water pressure would make it shoot out as far as it could go. So we just drilled holes on the top without really thinking about the consequences of what if it didn't work, and it worked very well. And we also laid the groundwork for a lot of the other teams when we cut our tower down in order to glue the connector on so that it wouldn't leak. And we also risked having to do the entire half of the tower again. And then if a recipe requires you to knead for an excess amount of time, like 15 minutes or so, or wait for 30 seconds between folds, listening to music is a good way to keep pace, and it's a good and creative solution. So I usually like listening to Seven Nation Army if I'm kneading, because there's this one recipe that I like to follow that I make kind of a lot. It's for like a type of Scottish bread, I think. And Seven Nation Army is fast enough that it doesn't knock out the bubbles in the bread, which means that it'll flatten the bread, and it's fast enough and it's slow enough that it won't make my shoulder hurt for 2 days after. So next thing is how to embrace appropriate risks and opportunities to help solve novel problems. So mine was the propaganda poster / the Cold War dossier project. Around midway through the year, we had an assignment to make a Cold War dossier. My first project was lost when iOS 11 updated, and then I lost the letters I made pretending to be a Soviet general talking to the scientists. And then I took a risk by not rewriting the entire project with the information I had, but instead I decided to make entirely new propaganda posters about the Soviet Union for warheads. And then I am not Sophia, so I can't draw very well, and I don't know how to use like Photoshop and stuff very well, so I actually downloaded a new app for this. And then so I went forward and took the risk anyway because I thought that it might help me out in the long run. MPX taught me that sometimes risk is rewarding. In traditional, it's easier and you'll get better results by following the rules exactly and doing the minimum of what it says as long as you meet the requirements. And changing tracks in MPX taught me adaptability and how to build from the ground up. Beforehand, I would just begrudgingly redo the project, but that now I could just try something new and work around it so I had the space to. And I once had a recipe that really didn't work out for challah because I'm Jewish. So I had to, for Shabbat, one time make challah because my dad wanted me to, and there's people coming over. And then the recipe originally required a lot more liquids than it did. I thought needed it, and it didn't work, and then the folds just melted into each other, and when we baked it, it looked like it just like was black on the inside and outside and raw on the inside. So instead, next time we made challah, I just eyeballed it and see what would work, and then I made that. So I was pretty proud of myself. But unfortunately, part of eyeballing it is that you don't know how much of what you used. So I can't recreate that ever again. But I can try. This is the first truly successful bread I made, and it helped me better. And also during braiding, because I can't braid. I don't have anyone to teach me really how to braid, so I just try to learn myself, and I used WikiHow to learn how to braid that piece of challah. And then originally it's supposed to be 4 pieces, so I cut into 4 pieces, and then I can't braid 4 pieces, so I just did 3 instead. Collect and analyze data from disparate disciplines in order to find new solutions. So my example of this is The Martian. So when we started reading The Martian, you guys all knew that I really like space and NASA, and I read The Martian before, and it used to be one of my favorite books. It still kind of is one of my favorite books. I was really passionate about things, and so I thought that I would do really good on this project. The Martian is a book that I've read multiple times, so I thought Socratic circles, because back then that wasn't seminars, it was circles, I would do really good. But then I started to overpower conversations and research assignments due to being so confident. I started to become smug. And then this led me to not being open to different ideas about the book. And eventually I realized it wasn't working, and I just started considering other people's interpretation instead of shutting them down. I saw that doing that would not only help me learn or give me a good grade in Socratic circles, but I gathered that people who didn't want to work with me because I called the shots and what we did. The only person who was willing was Justin. So, but it's okay because he listened to me, and I managed to teach him quite a few things. And so I started to learn how to listen to other people and to hold my tongue, sometimes actively thinking about holding my tongue, so that I wouldn't go over, and that I also admitted that I was wrong about something, because I think it was the second circle we were talking about how the U.S. and the Chinese Space Agency won't ever work together. And though I still hold that firm belief, it really was a slap in the face when it was a bit of a wake-up call when 2 months later, like last week or so, I found out that commercial space programs run under NASA or alongside like SpaceX are both drawing from an undergraduate software development firm by the Chinese military. So they're still competitors, but at least they're sharing now. And I thought that would never ever happen. Bread cannot rise or prove for no reason. Bread can rise or prove for no reason whatsoever, even though it's supposed to. I had to see what was not working, over kneading maybe, which knocks all the bubbles out, and change it. The solution was to heat it up and activate the yeast by putting it in the oven at 100 degrees, which worked even though I baked lightly the top of it. So bread tends to, so do you see that bubble over there? That's what happens when you create it airtight, and then the yeast works. So that's all the air from the yeast, like the carbon dioxide released. And then that's what it looks like. It's full of bubbles. It's kind of wrinkly and gross, but when you eat it, it's good. So nurture and sustain and steward the environment and community in which I live. For this, I decided the Columbus and Indians debate. Earlier this year, we learned about Christopher Columbus and the atrocities he committed. After learning about him for one class, it was time to debate. I was given the role of a member of a Taino Indian and people that Columbus had killed and enslaved. I also sustained the environment around the debate by letting up space and asking only engaging questions instead of overpowering it. I was one of the groups that had an easier job because because when you read it, it's like sort of clearly Columbus is at fault here. But I still let people who had harder jobs have the floor. And then analogy is, if you don't know, water plus flour, if it's sort of milky in nature, is kind of like glue. It's almost exactly like glue. So if you leave it be after you're done with it, or leave some flour and water in a puddle or something, it's going to be really hard to remove later. So you always have to sustain the environment and make sure everything's clean around you. But actually, literally though, you have to watch how the ingredients react in bread. Like you're supposed to watch how yeast is supposed to fizz, and if you're making sourdough, milk is supposed to separate. Lastly, I haven't not yet found my stride when it comes to learning in the MPX style, but I am improving. A big part of MPX is self-driven learning. I rarely have much motivation to do things. But I have a really hard time finding it, but I am starting to get better. So, and then bread, after a bunch of packets, you could make this, which I'm quite proud of. And then, in conclusion, thanks for listening. And then also, this is, you could enjoy the fruits of your labor after you're done with working, so you could sit back and spend it satisfied. And so that was good, except it didn't taste good. So I still have to learn that. So it looks good, but tastes terrible. Okay, thank you.
You should have brought bread to share with us.
Yeah.
You don't want to take it.
Huh?
John, what was the time?
12:06.
Any questions for Esther? Any questions? That was a great analogy.
Columbus
I think it
wasn't
fit
at
well.
fault. The king and the queen
Yeah.
were. Remember that?
Okay.
No, it doesn't
The king and the queen were.
I'll bring bread next
Columbus
time.
went to the king
Huh?
and the
I
queen.
bring bread next time, but
No,
trust
but
me, it
remember we
doesn't
concluded.
taste like how
Oh,
you
yeah.
think it does. It tastes like nothing. It
She
tastes
called
like
me out
nothing.
once.
The butter is for.
Remember I said I packaged you?
Yeah.
So I bad or my
Um,
Taino Indians
yep.
or something.
Michael, stop the camera.